One was the goal towards which they had been working feverishly for a full 12 months, to plant a colony across the gulf of space, a successful colony, later to be used as a stepping stone to other worlds. So we have to move faster. Ruthven's comment reached Ash through his stream of memories. I thought you required at least 3 more months to conclude personal training, Waldor observed. Ruthven lifted a fat hand, running the nail of a broad thumb back and forth across his lower lip in a habitual gesture Ash had learned to mistrust. As the latter stiffened, bracing for a battle of wills, he saw Kilgarry's come alert too. At least the colonel more often than not was ready to counter Ruthven's demands. "We test and we test," said the fat man. "Always we test. We move like turtles when it would be better to race like greyhounds. There is such a thing as overcaution, as I have said from the first. One would think," his accusing glance included Ash and Kilgarry's, "that there had never been any improvising in this project, that all had always been done by the book. I say that this is the time we must take the big gamble, or else we may find we have been outbid for space entirely. Let those others discover even one alien installation they can master and..." His thumb shifted from his lip, grinding down on the desktop as if it were crushing some venturesome but entirely unimportant insect. "And we are finished before we really begin." There were a number of men in the project who would agree with that, Ash knew, and a greater number in the country and conference at large. The public was used to reckless gambles which paid off, and there had been enough of those in the past to give an impressive argument for that point of view. But Ash himself could not agree to a speed up. He had been out among the stars, shaved disaster too closely because the proper training had not been given. "I shall report that I advise a takeoff within a week," Ruthven was continuing. "To the Council I shall say that." "And I do not agree," Ash cut in. He glanced at Kilgarry's for the quick backing he expected, but instead there was a lengthening moment of silence. Then the colonel spread out his hands and said sullenly, "I don't agree either, but I don't have the final say-so. Ash, what would be needed to speed up any takeoff?" It was Ruthven who replied, "We can use the redax, as I have said from the start." Ash straightened, his mouth tight, his eyes hard and angry. "And I'll protest that to the Council. Man, we're dealing with human beings, selected volunteers, men who trust us, not with laboratory animals." Ruthven's thick lips pouted into what was close to a smile of derision. "Always a sentimentalist, you experts in the past. Tell me, Dr. Ash, were you always so thoughtful of your men when you sent agents back into time? And certainly a voyage into space is less a risk than time travel. These volunteers know what they have signed for. They will be ready." "Then you propose telling them about the use of redax, what it does to a man's mind?" countered Ash. "Certainly. They will receive all necessary instructions." Ash was not satisfied, and he would have spoken again, but Kilgarry's interrupted. "If it comes to that, none of us here has a right to make final decisions. Waldar has already sent in his report about the snoop. We'll have to await orders from the Council." Ruthven levered himself out of his chair, his solid bulk stretching his uniform coveralls. "That is correct, Colonel. In the meantime, I would suggest we all check to see what can be done to speed up each one's portion of labor." Without another word, he tramped to the door. Waldar eyed the other two with mounting impatience. It was plain he had work to do and wanted them to leave. But Ash was reluctant. He had a feeling that matters were slipping out of his control, that he was about to face a crisis which was somehow worse than just a major security leak. Was the enemy always on the other side of the world? Or could he wear the same uniform, even share the same goals. In the outer corridor he still hesitated, and Kilgary's, a step or so in advance, looked back over his shoulder impatiently. "There's no use fighting. Our hands are tied." His words were slurred, almost as if he wanted to disown them. "Then you'll agree to use the reed axe?" For the second time within an hour, Ash felt as if he had taken a step only to have firm earth turn into slippery, shifting sand underfoot. "It isn't a matter of my agreeing. It may be a matter of getting through or not getting through now. If they've had 18 months or even 12." The colonel's fingers balled into a fist. "And they won't be delayed by any humanitarian reasoning." "Then you believe Ruthven will win the Council's approval?" "When you're dealing with frightened men, you're talking to ears closed to anything but what they want to hear. After all, we can't prove that the redax will be harmful." "But we've only used it under rigidly controlled conditions. To speed up the process would mean a total disregard of those controls. Snapping a party of men and women back into the racial past and holding them there for too long a period." Ash shook his head. "You have been in Operation Retrograde from the start, and we've been remarkably successful. Operating in a different way, educating picked men to return to certain points in history where their particular temperaments and characteristics fitted the roles they were selected to play, yes. And even then we had our percentage of failures. But to try this, returning people not physically into time, but mentally and emotionally into prototypes of their ancestors, that's something else again. The Apaches have volunteered, and they've been passed by the psychologists and the testers. But they're Americans of today, not tribal nomads of 200 or 300 years ago. If you break down some barriers, you might just end up breaking them all." Kilgary's was scowling. "You mean they might revert utterly? Have no contact with the present at all?" "That's just what I do mean. Education and training, yes. But full awakening of racial memories, no. The two branches of conditioning should go slowly and hand in hand. Otherwise, real trouble. Only we no longer have the time to go slow. I'm certain Ruthven will be able to push this through, with Walder's report to back him. Then we'll have to warn Fox and the rest. They must be given a choice in the matter." "Ruthven said that would be done." The colonel did not sound convinced of that. Ash snorted. "If I hear him telling them, I'll believe it. I wonder whether we can." Ash half turned and frowned at the colonel. "What do you mean?" "You said yourself that we had our failures in time travel. We expected those, accepted them, even when they hurt. When we asked for volunteers for this project, we had to make them understand that there was a heavy element of risk involved. 3 teams of recruits: the Eskimos from Point Barren, the Apaches, and the Islanders, all picked because their people had a high survival rating in the past, to be colonists on widely different types of planets. Well, the Eskimos and the Islanders aren't matched to any of the worlds on those snoop tapes. But Topaz is waiting for the Apaches, and we may have to move them in there in a hurry. It's a rotten gamble any way you see it. I'll appeal directly to the Council." Kilgary shrugged. "All right, you have my backing. But you believe such an effort hopeless. You know the red tape merchants. You'll have to move fast if you want to beat Ruthven. He's probably on a straight line now to Stanton, Reese, and Margate. This is what he has been waiting for. There are the news syndicates. Public opinion would back us." "You don't mean that, of course." Kilgary's was suddenly coldly remote. Ash flushed under the heavy brown which overlay his regular features. To threaten a silence break was near blasphemy here. He ran both hands down the fabric covering his thighs